Welcome to the Explainer. So today we're diving into something pretty intense. How the state of Israel was declared on one day and then found itself invaded the very next. It's an incredible story about a nation forged in a 30-year fire of conflict, a cycle of wars that would define not just its borders, but its entire identity.
So, how did a nation founded on the idea of survival immediately get plunged into a fight for its life? I mean, that's the big question, right? And it's not just some dusty old history lesson. The answer is absolutely key to understanding the geopolitics of the Middle East and the conflicts that are still playing out to this very day.
All right, to get a handle on this, we're going to break it down into 5 key parts. We'll start with Israel's difficult birth, then walk through 4 massive wars and see how each one pretty much set the stage for the next.
So, first things first. Before we can even talk about the wars, we've got to set the stage and look at the volatile mix of events that led up to Israel's creation in the first place.
This didn't just happen overnight. We're talking about a slow burn over, like, half a century. It starts with Jewish migration back in the Ottoman days, then you get Britain making these big promises during World War I, and then the whole British Mandate period where tensions just kept rising and rising. It was a pressure cooker. So, the UN steps in with what seems like a logical solution. Let's just split the land into 2 states, one Jewish, one Arab. But here's where things get really divided. Jewish leaders, they accepted the plan. But for Arab leaders, no way. They saw it as foreign powers just carving up their land, and they rejected it completely. This disagreement was really the final spark. And look, they weren't mincing words about it either. This quote from the Arab League Secretary General is just chillingly clear. He basically said, "This is going to be settled by war." It wasn't a maybe, it was presented as the only way forward.
And that right there, that set the stage for the first, and maybe the most defining, war in Israel's young history.
Okay, so picture this. May 14th, 1948. The British are out, and David Ben-Gurion stands up and declares the establishment of a Jewish state. It's a massive moment. A new nation is born, but they literally didn't even get a full day of peace.
I mean, can you even imagine? You've just declared your country's existence, and the very next morning you wake up to find you're being invaded, not by one army, but by 5. For the Israelis, this wasn't a border dispute anymore. This was a fight for their very survival.
And what happened next? Well, it shocked just about everyone. The brand new Israeli forces didn't just repel the invasion, they went on the attack. By the time it was all over, Israel actually controlled way more land than the original UN plan had given them.
But this victory came at a huge human cost. During the fighting, about 700,000 Palestinian Arabs either fled or were expelled from their homes. This created a massive refugee crisis that, to this day, has never been resolved. For Palestinians, this event is known as the Nakba, which means the catastrophe.
And at the same time, something else was happening, kind of a mirror image of that tragedy. Across the Middle East, Jewish communities that had been there for centuries, in places like Iraq and Egypt, were also uprooted. Nearly 900,000 of them were expelled or had to flee, with most ending up in the new state of Israel.
Okay, so the next big flashpoint, this one goes global. Suddenly, the Middle East becomes a giant chessboard for the Cold War superpowers, the US and the Soviet Union.
It all kicks off when Egypt's President Nasser nationalizes the Suez Canal, which was a huge deal for Britain and France. Then he blockades a key shipping lane for Israel. That leads to the secret plan between Israel, Britain, and France to invade. But, and this is the key part, the US and the Soviet Union stepped in and basically forced everyone to back down. It proved the real power brokers were now in Washington and Moscow.
Fast forward about a decade, and all those simmering tensions are about to boil over in a way no one saw coming. We're talking about a war that was over in less than a week, but changed the map of the Middle East forever.
So in the spring of '67, Egypt moves its army into the Sinai, kicks out the UN peacekeepers, and sets up another blockade. With armies gathering on all its borders, Israel's leaders felt the writing was on the wall. They decided they couldn't just wait to be attacked. They chose to strike first.
And that first move, wow, it was absolutely devastating. Just look at this. In a matter of hours, just 3 hours, the Israeli Air Force pretty much wiped out the entire Egyptian Air Force while it was still on the ground. Achieving total air supremacy that fast was the total game changer.
And with no threat from the air, Israeli ground forces just rolled.
In 6 days, just 6, they took the entire Sinai Peninsula and Gaza from Egypt, the West Bank and East Jerusalem from Jordan, and the strategic Golan Heights from Syria. The size of Israel's territory more than tripled. It was just unbelievable.
So how did the Arab world respond to this just crushing defeat? With total defiance. Leaders got together in Khartoum and issued what's famous for its 3 no's. No peace with Israel, no recognition of Israel, and no negotiations with Israel. The door to diplomacy was slammed shut. That humiliation in '67 didn't lead to peace talks. It led to a deep-seated desire to get even. And that set the stage for the next big war, one that would catch Israel completely, and I mean completely off guard.
And the timing of this attack was, strategically speaking, brilliant. Yom Kippur is the holiest, most solemn day in the Jewish calendar. The entire country pretty much shuts down. It was the absolute last time anyone expected an invasion, which made the psychological shock just immense.
So, the war starts, and at first, it's a huge success for Egypt and Syria. Israel is on its heels, totally reeling. But after a few really desperate days, they managed to mobilize their reserves, counterattack, and eventually turn the tide. In the end, Israel won on the battlefield, but that feeling of being invincible, that was gone forever. And weirdly, that's what finally opened the door to peace. It seems strange, right? But this is how we got from war to peace. The conflict proved that Israel could be hurt, but also that it couldn't be destroyed. That new reality allowed American diplomats to come in and forge a historic deal. Egypt became the first Arab nation to recognize Israel, and in return, Israel gave back the entire Sinai Peninsula. It completely changed the game. So after 30 years of nonstop conflict, Israel finally had a peace treaty with its biggest neighbor. But it also left these massive, unresolved issues on the table. The disputed territories, the Palestinian question, and that really brings us to the critical question that still hangs over the region today. After all this, can the cycle of conflict ever truly be broken?